Hello, everyone. Happy Vesak. Today is the Buddha's Enlightenment and birthday. It's the most holy day of the Buddhist calendar. And normally, up to this point, many monasteries would have been doing the Nongne practice, if you're a Tibetan Buddhist, which is a practice to a thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. Other centers might have been doing a lot of insight meditation and on this day, days before, they clean the whole temple and they cover it with beautiful garlands of flowers and fragrant incense. And, anything that needs to be painted is painted. And, they open the monastery to the public, and it's a time of great rejoicing. People would offer tea and requisites to the monastery, and a lot of prayers would have been done, often for many days, followed by initiations. And in some Himalayan places, the Buddha's statue and many of the texts, which are very big in a Tibetan monastery, would be carried in a grand procession with a parasol, and people would walk around the village and the fields, saying prayers so that the whole village is blessed. And there's always this kind of intimate connection between the monastery. In the West, we imagine a monastery is not very useful to us as a layperson because it's a place for monks. It's a place where they do meditation. It's a place of silence. It doesn't have a lot to do with the modern world, with the stresses of our daily life. But in Asia, monasteries are very much interconnected with the village and part of the cultural and social life of the village. And, older folks go there every day to find solace, to find some peace, to enjoy some noble friendship and social interactions. They also make good karma, by helping cook lunch. Orphans are adopted by the monastery and given an education. People who are unemployed might volunteer for a while so they don't become homeless. They do some meditation and some service, and they stay at the monastery. So the monastery is a focal point for the whole community. And particularly on this day, because the world is so stressed out, because the world is so crazy, monasteries are a place of refuge, a place of peace and tranquility, where you can come and restore yourself and reconnect to what you most deeply value. So it's a great and wonderful thing. Friends from all over the world, I can't be with you all in person. I'm in this remote place in Tasmania, but I'm incredibly happy. And after 20 years of ordination as a nun, 21 actually, I've managed to buy land, 38 acres in the beautiful southern island of Tasmania, off the bottom of Australia, in UNESCO protected World Heritage Forest, in a small cottage with several cabins. And hopefully over time our community will grow. It's a shame it took me so long to get here, but it's wonderful that I am here, and I'm incredibly happy and blessed. And if you do hear some groaning, it's because of my dog, who is a bit of a funny character. But anyway, perhaps we can do some meditation. What I'll invite you to do is pause and do the meditation when I suggest. And that way, this video won't go so long, and you can do the meditation for as long as you have time. But on this holy day, every action is multiplied. And even if you don't believe that every action is multiplied, it's always good to do meditation and find some peace and reconnect with inner space, right? Inner solitude, your true home. So just wherever you are, turn off the TV and close your eyes, sit with a straight back. Let go of any tension and just be aware of your breath. So I invite you to follow your breath just for 5 minutes and then to turn the video back on. Okay, so you've just done 5 minutes meditation. Now imagine a beautiful golden light, the light of unconditional love and kindness flowing through you. And know that you have Buddha nature, that you, just as you are unique. You're made of the bodies of your ancestors, and you exist through the efforts of the sun, the rain, the food, the earth, interconnected, interbeing with all of heaven and earth, through your many non-self elements, like the farmer who grows your food, the teachers who taught you, who gave you an education, the parents who gave you a body, the boss who pays your wages, the person who makes your clothes and builds you shelter. All of life you are intimately connected with. And no matter what you've done, that inner refuge of peace and clarity, that inner goodness and enlightened potential is always there. So accept yourself as you are, even though you may have some things to still improve. Just to be alive is a miracle. What can you see with your eyes? These beautiful eyes, when you see the setting sun or the Himalayan mountains, or when you go for a bushwalk with your precious body, the abode of deities. Just feel that as if the sun is in your heart and this beautiful unconditional love and warmth and golden light is filling your whole body and mind. And say to yourself, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be peaceful and at ease. May I be filled with loving kindness and compassion. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness and compassion. And if you find it hard to develop loving kindness for yourself, just think about some of the good things you've done in your life. Maybe you saved someone's life. Maybe you bought groceries to a poor person. Maybe you sponsor a child in Africa. Maybe you help your mother every weekend. Maybe you're a good partner or a good parent. Maybe you rescued an animal. Maybe you were kind to the kid that everybody picks on in school. Just think of a few things. And if you can't, just think of things that you want to do, the good things you want to do in future. And allow that loving kindness, that rejoicing in your own goodness and potential to fill your whole body. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be filled with loving kindness and compassion. So just do this for a few minutes. Pause your phone. And now we're back. Think of someone who is very close to you, perhaps your mother, your child, maybe not a romantic partner, even your childhood pet, grandmother, someone who is just very kind to you. Imagine them looking at you, doesn't matter if they're alive or dead. Imagine them looking at you with loving eyes. Know that they would die for your happiness. How much better, think about how much better your life is with them or has been. All the things they've given you, the warm feeling between you, the love and understanding they've shown you, how many meals they've cooked for you. Just whatever specific examples of their kindness you can think of. Think about it until you have a warm feeling in your heart. And send them your loving kindness, because they also suffer. They will also face birth, sickness, old age, and death, and reincarnate endlessly in the wheel of samsara. And even if you don't believe in future lives, there's still kind of existential element of suffering to being alive, uncertainty. So share with them the blessings of your life. Imagine that warm, loving kindness flowing to them from your heart, that beautiful golden light and warm energy. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be filled with loving kindness and compassion. Just do this for a few minutes, maybe 2 minutes, and pause. Okay, we're back. And we're choosing a person who we don't know very well, an acquaintance, maybe the barista who makes our coffee, maybe the checkout chick at the local supermarket, checkout person, I should say. Someone who pumps our petrol, just, someone we don't know very well. But send them your loving kindness, because they also have known the great joys that you know. They've also known the fears that you suffer in their own way, just as you feel, just as your feelings are real for you. So likewise, this person suffers and feels things intimately. If you've lost a child, if you've had a miscarriage, if you have suffered homelessness or poverty, chances are this person also worries about those things. And even if they don't have the same kind of suffering as you, whatever pain you've been through, we all suffer that pain in various manifestations. We're all human. We all are vulnerable. So just send them the loving kindness from your heart. Share with them the blessings of your life. Even you could imagine a homeless person. How terrible it must be. And it could be us, The only difference is that we are holding on to ourselves, but they are also intimately part of our world, and they feel things just as deeply and as personally as we do. So dear stranger, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be peaceful and at ease. May you be filled with loving kindness and compassion. May you find comfort and understanding and empowerment. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be peaceful and at ease, filled with loving kindness and compassion. So pause for a moment, do this meditation, and then come back. And we're back again, and we're doing loving kindness for all people in the world, all the people who feel the same joy and sorrow just as we do. May all beings be well. May they be happy. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be filled with loving kindness and compassion. Just as I suffer, whatever things you've suffered, think about those things. Other people also suffer those things all over the world. Women are having miscarriages all over the world. People's relationships are breaking up all over the world. People are losing their jobs. People are hungry. People feel depressed. People feel lonely. People feel bored. People feel misunderstood. People are worried about their own survival. We are really not that different from each other, 6 degrees of separation. And all over the world, people are also connected by joy and love and hope and creativity. So think of those things too. Others are our second self. The body we have, the fact that we're alive is due to the kindness of others. It's easy to forget that. But really, everything we have comes from others. May all beings be well, may they be happy, may they be peaceful and at ease, may they be filled with loving kindness and compassion. May all beings be well, may they be happy, may they be peaceful and at ease, may they be filled with loving kindness and compassion. So just do that for a few moments. Pause your phone. And we're back. So today we celebrate the enlightenment and birth of the Buddha. So the Buddha was a prince, an Indian prince, born 2,600 years ago in the Nepalese place called Kushinagar, which at the time was a very small kind of basically like a tiny clearing in a forest, really. So there is, Buddha the human, and there is Buddha the archetype. So there's all kinds of stories told about the Buddha as a kind of super mundane bodhisattva. The story goes that he had been practicing as a bodhisattva for many lifetimes. The first time he developed compassion or great bodhicitta, the wish to free all beings from suffering, was when he was pulling a cart in a hellish kind of existence, and the person pulling the cart with him fell down and died and was beaten to death. And he felt great compassion and said, "Oh, don't beat him. I'll pull the cart myself." And because of this thought of compassion, he emerged from a hellish state of existence. And for many lifetimes, he'd been accumulating the good karma, the paramis, the meditation, good deeds, purification, and perfections of a bodhisattva, a compassionate spiritual warrior who is on the path to become a Buddha, to liberate all beings from suffering. And finally, he chose to take birth, and his mother, Maya Devi, had a dream that a white elephant entered her side, and she felt a sense of overwhelming peace and bliss. And she told her husband, "I feel like I might be pregnant. I feel this sense of tremendous well-being." And her husband was very happy because he really wanted sons. In India, sons were a blessing because they help you in the field, they help you run your kingdom. And when the Buddha was born, the Buddha to be, I should say, they called him Siddhartha, which means to accomplish the goal. And unfortunately, a few days after his birth, his mother, Maya Devi, died. And she was reborn in the pure realms, they say. And the Buddha's stepmother, who was Maya Devi's half-sister, took over and became his most devoted stepmother or foster mother. She was called Gautami. And, when a son is born in a king's palace, there's a lot of festivities, and some holy men came to offer their blessings to the child. And there was one hermit called Asita, and he said, when he saw the child, he started to cry, and the king said, "Is there something wrong, great hermit? Please tell us. Do you see some misfortune in my son's future?" And the hermit said, "I do not cry because I see some misfortune in your son's future. I cry because I will not live long enough to see your son attain enlightenment and give teachings." And the king Shodadhan was pretty disturbed by this. And he said, what do you mean that he's going to become a hermit? He's going to become a great king and expand my borders. He can become a hermit when he's old if he wants. But before then, he must rule the kingdom. And Asita smiled and said, well, he will be a sensitive soul and he will be highly evolved. So you should protect him from seeing the sorrows of the world, because if he sees the sorrows of the world, he will be moved to renounce the world and seek a way out of birth and death for the liberation of all beings. So you must protect him from the sufferings of the world. Otherwise, he will leave the world behind. So King Shuddhadan did exactly what Asita said and brought Siddhartha up with 3 pleasure palaces, one for each season: the rainy season, the cold season, and the hot season. And Siddhartha was surrounded by beautiful, healthy young people. He never saw anyone with a deformity, or I shouldn't say deformity, I should say, who was other abled or, sick or unpleasant in any way, or even, a King Shuddhadan was very careful to cover the grey hairs on his head. So Siddhartha grew up never knowing about poverty, old age, sickness, and death. And one day, as he became a man, he married a beautiful princess called Yashodhara. He won her heart in an archery competition. And as a child, he showed a lot of sensitivity. One day his cousin Devadatta shot a swan from the sky, and the swan fell to the ground with a cry of pain as the arrow had fallen in it. It's pierced its wing. Siddhartha saved the swan and applied balm to its wound. And Devadatta said, that is my swan. I shot it from the sky. And they went to the elders, and the elders decided that, and Siddhartha said, but those who love each other live together, and those who harm each other live apart. And the elders agreed with him and gave him the swan to care for, although Siddhartha suspected it wasn't because they had a sense of justice and compassion, but more because he was the son of the king. Anyway, Siddhartha and Yashodhara loved each other very much. They would often sit in the cool palace in the evening with beautiful sandalwood, incense, under the light of the full moon, reading poetry and listening to music and watching classical dancers dance. During the day, Siddhartha amused himself with chariot rides, archery, wrestling, being educated in mathematics, science, and astronomy or astrology, as well as the Vedas, the Hindu holy texts. And, he would have had contact with many different kinds of religious figures as well. But one day, Siddhartha heard a beautiful song that it really pierced his heart. It was full of longing. It was so beautiful, but it was full of longing. And he asked the singer, he said, what is this song? And she said, it is the song of my homeland that I will never see again. A place of beauty that is lost forever to me. And that kind of longing and beauty of things unseen made Siddhartha think about the world outside, the world beyond his gates. And Yashodhara said, we are very well cared for here. Why would you want to seek the sorrow that I have heard lies outside these gates? We have everything we could possibly need. And Siddhartha said, surely I should see the kingdom I'm one day going to rule. So he managed to convince his father to let him outside. But his father, pre-organized everything, the route he was going to travel. They shipped all the beggars and the old people and the poor people out of town. They painted, all the passageways. They gave the villagers new clothes and planned it very carefully. But of course, some elderly people and some beggars still were in town that they didn't know. And when Siddhartha saw these people, uh, these elderly people, he asked the driver of his chariot, Channa, to stop. And, he saw that their bodies were hunched and wrinkled and they had no teeth, and they were walking with sticks. And he said, "What is wrong with those people?" And Channa said, "My lord, this is old age. Nobody can escape the ravages of old age. Eventually our eyesight, our hearing goes, our body starts to ache. No one can avoid this. This is the fate of everyone." And Siddhartha was a little bit shocked. On another pleasure outing to a garden, they saw a person writhing in great pain on the side of the road. Half of his body was swollen and covered in wounds, and the other half was emaciated and very yellow. There was a terrible smell coming from him. And Siddhartha asked the court doctor to, that he be sent for and that this man be helped. But he was very disturbed, and once again he asked Channa later on, "What is this?" And Channa said, "My lord, this is sickness. Nobody can go through life without escaping sickness. When the body aches, when all well-being and strength is sapped from us, this happens. And the body is vulnerable to all kinds of illness. It cannot be escaped." And he said, "You mean this sickness, this old age will happen to everyone I love?" And Channa said, "Yes, my lord, it is unavoidable." And on another outing, they saw the procession of people carrying the body of a young man who just died. And all the people walking with the body was pulling out their hair and wailing and ripping their own clothes. And Siddhartha said, "What is this? What has happened?" And Channa said, "My lord, that man has departed his body. His body has become as lifeless as a piece of dead wood. And his family, the ones who loved him and cared for him, and rejoiced in seeing him every day, the ones who depended on him, will never see him again. It is the final destination of everybody. Nobody who is born can avoid the future of death. As soon as we're born, we are on a one-way road to death, and we don't know when. Young, old, middle-aged, children, we just don't know when we'll die. Life is finite." And this was a big shock to Siddhartha, because he'd never seen any of these things: birth, sickness, old age, and death. And he became very disturbed by this, the knowledge that he and everyone he loved would pass away. And he thought, my wife is pregnant, and I still haven't mastered myself or found answers for the suffering of the world. I don't know myself, and yet I'm about to bring another person into the world. Siddhartha at this time was in his late 20s. And he was disturbed. And then one day it had been going on in his mind, not just like, I want to escape this. It wasn't running away. It was a deep existential crisis of how to overcome the suffering of life, which is so brutal. And if you've ever lost someone very close to you, I think it's very natural if you're a sensitive person, to ask these kind of questions, If I'm going to die, what is the most important thing to do with my life? If I could die at any time, how can I find some wisdom, some security that will take me through the hardship of life? And finally, he saw a fourth vision, which was a very peaceful man dressed in orange with a shaved head, walking through the village one day with a bowl, and people would just give him a little bit of food. And that man was walking very slowly and very mindfully, and he had some kind of rudraksh beads around his neck. And Siddhartha said to Channa, "Who is that man? What is he doing?" And Channa said, "My lord, that man has left behind the world. He has left behind the cares and responsibilities of family. He doesn't have a regular shelter. He just lives on what people offer him every day, and he's devoted to finding the meaning of life and meditation. And he probably has students and gives spiritual teaching and solace to others. And we believe those people are, an asset in our society. They're beacons of wisdom. And those people live in the forest like hermits. And they're called sannyasis or sadhus, homeless wanderers or mendicants, alms mendicants. And that really inspired Siddhartha and made him think. And as the days of Yashodra's pregnancy progressed, he became more and more anxious and felt more and more stifled in the palace. And he knew, death could come at any time. Sickness can come at any time. My own beloved wife and child will eventually be parted from me. I must find some lasting wisdom so that I can deal with the ravages, the sufferings of life. And finally, his determination to leave became like a burning fire inside him, and he could no longer live a normal life. His father had had sensed his dis-ease and had ramped up the entertainment. So almost every night they'd had raucous parties, and one night they had invited a dance troupe with really attractive female and male dancers, but mostly female. And, they'd had a big party and they'd done these amazing dances, and they'd all fallen asleep. And everybody was asleep, and but Siddhartha was awake. And he looked at the sleeping bodies of the dancing girls who had been so beguiling, so enlivened when they were awake, so mesmerizing. But, in their kind of drunken slumber with their makeup all smeared, with their bodies just kind of lying in abandon like people who've had a big party and drunk too much do. To him, they looked like a pile of corpses, and he just saw through the illusion of allure. And this is not, to denigrate women's bodies, because the Buddha also talked to nuns about, or women about, giving up too much attachment and the vanity of just looking at superficial things. So it's more about giving up your own attachment to superficial appearances. You can enjoy it, but don't give your life for that. Seek something deeper. And so only Channa knew that night Siddhartha had made a vow to leave the palace. That night Yashodhara gave birth to a son who they called Rahul, and Siddhartha felt a great aching in his heart. He knew that if he picked up the child, he would never be able to leave. So he made a vow: I will return as soon as I have found the path to awakening, the way out of suffering for the sake of all beings. And my son, I know my son will be well cared for by my wife, who is a virtuous and loving person, and my mother and father. And I don't do this to just run away, but to seek a way out of suffering for all beings. So he packed a small bag and took his horse Kantanka, and Channa led him out of the city gates. He looked, as he climbed the mountain, he looked back over the city, Kapilavastu, which was in northern India, Bihar state. And he took his sword and cut his long hair, which is a symbol of power and worldliness and virility. And he handed his hair and his sword and his jewels to Channa, and he said, I will come back when I have found the way. And Channa said, my lord, you have led such a privileged life. I don't think you really know what you're doing. You won't be able to sleep on the hard, cold ground with the wild animals, and the robbers. You have not lived on the coarse food of peasants when you go on alms round. You've lived a pampered life. At least let me come with you to protect you. And Siddharth smiled and he said, Channa, you're my dear friend, but I cannot take a servant or a helper with me. I need to follow this path alone. But as soon as I have found the way, I will come back and share it with you. And so with tears in his eyes, Channa bid farewell to Siddharth, and his horse, who he'd had for a very long time, also looked at him with great sadness. And he walked off into the forest. And days passed, weeks passed. Siddharth studied with many different teachers. At first, he developed single-pointed concentration, but when he came back into normal meditation, he still suffered with a mundane mind. He still suffered negative emotions. So he went to another teacher who taught him deeper levels of concentration, and he stayed in blissful samadhi for many days and even weeks. But still his mind was not completely liberated from the cycle of birth and death, from the fetters of suffering. Finally, he met a teacher who said, I've taught you all I can teach you. Please, why don't you share leadership of this community with me? And Siddharth said, you're very kind, but I still have not achieved the goal of liberation I set out to reach, which is the complete end of suffering and rebirth. So he left and decided to go off on his own and seek his own way. He practiced with 5 ascetic friends, and they practiced for many months in the forest. One of them would just go and beg a bit of food, and they would eat just a really small amount, 1 meal a day. And they would practice austerities like staring at the sun or, meditating like this with their arm up in the air. The idea was that you starve the body and the mind becomes liberated. But after many, many months like this, Siddharth was so thin he could press his fingers to his stomach and feel his spine. And he was so weak. One day he got in the water to bathe and he couldn't get out again. He almost drowned. And a nearby shepherdess called Sujata who was grazing some goats, helped him to get out of the water and gave him a little bit of milk, and that gave him a bit of strength. And he realized, and she bought him some sweet rice the next day, and he felt so much better and his meditation was better, and he realized that following the extreme of self-denial and austerities was not liberating him. It was an obstacle. So he'd lived this hedonistic life, and he'd also lived the life of denial, and these two were the extremes. So he followed the middle path between the extreme of hedonism and asceticism. But his friends thought he'd abandoned the path, so they left him. But soon afterwards, on the full moon night, Siddharth realized enlightenment. He made a vow. He sat on some kusha grass under a Bodhi tree, and he made a vow that I will not get up until I achieve enlightenment. So, in the first part of the night, he saw his past lives. He saw how so many beings are born and die like waves on the ocean, but they themselves are the ocean, just like a wave arises, abides, and dissolves. So many lives they suffered due to negative emotions. But their essential nature was emptiness, was interconnectedness, and they always had this Buddha nature. He saw the rise and fall of universes and planets. He saw his own past lives, his mistakes and his triumphs. He saw that the mothers who'd given birth to him had